Welcome to this explainer. All right, today we're jumping right into a pretty wild connection that I bet you rarely think about. We're going to look at how our ancient primate biology, yeah, you heard me right, primate biology, directly hijacks our modern trips to the grocery store, the mall, and let's be honest, the drive-thru. It's basically a journey spanning millions of years, starting out in the lush, green jungles with our ancestors and landing right at your local fast food counter. So let's tackle this question right out of the gate. Why exactly does a yellow M on a red background instantly make us crave fries? We see these colors literally everywhere. Think about the massive fast food chains out there. They almost universally rely heavily on these super vibrant reds and yellows. But, why? Is it just some design trend, or is there a hardwired biological reason that this specific color combo physically kickstarts your appetite? To figure that out, we really need to look at what's actually going on inside our brains when those colors hit our retinas. Which brings us to Section 1. Branded in the brain. Let's start by looking at the hard science of how neurological marketing affects us. There was this fascinating study from researchers at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and the University of Kansas Medical Center. They actually put 10 to 14-year-old kids inside an MRI scanner to track the blood flow in their brains. Then they showed them 60 logos from popular fast food brands, think McDonald's, KFC, and 60 logos from non-food brands like BMW or FedEx. The results, honestly, they were astounding. When those kids saw the fast food images, the specific parts of their brains that control pleasure and appetite just immediately lit up. Huge rush of activity. But when they looked at everyday corporate logos, like a shipping company or a car brand, nothing. Those reward centers completely ignored them. And here's the real kicker. Marketers are effectively tapping into these deep reward centers way before a child even develops a basic sense of self-control. This isn't just some neat little science trick. It has massive, real-world consequences. Get this. By 2008, nearly 20% of kids aged 6 to 11 in the U.S. were classified as obese. That's a number that had nearly tripled over the previous 30 years. This marketing works so incredibly well because it completely bypasses our logical, rational filtering and goes straight for the primal pleasure centers. All right, moving on to Section 2, the primate connection. To really get why our minds react like this, we've got to leave the sterile hospital research wing and travel way back in time to the jungle. See, humans, apes, and old-world monkeys have this thing called trichromatic vision. Unlike a lot of other mammals, early primates evolved this unique perceptual bias that let them distinguish between blue, green, and most importantly for us, red hues. Researchers at Ohio University actually analyzed over 200 different primate species, and they found that our neuroscience points directly to a hardwired bias for brilliant colors. Basically, we are biologically programmed to pay attention the second something bright and colorful pops into our view. Now, millions of years ago, the ability to see red was a massive survival cheat code. It helped early primates forage, allowing them to easily spot ripe, nutritious red and orange fruits against a sea of green leaves. But the story doesn't stop at just finding lunch. Once we evolved this color vision, it actually drove the evolution of red skin and hair in primates. The researchers described it as a sort of monkey see, monkey do scenario. What started as a foraging tool eventually evolved into a tool for sexual and social selection. We literally started using those exact same vibrant colors to identify dominant mates and figure out the social hierarchy of the group. Which leads us to Section 3, biology meets psychology. Fast forwarding back to today, different wavelengths of color generate really specific physical reactions that our modern brains interpret as complex emotions. Just look at the color psychology wheel. Red represents power, passion, energy, and excitement. It literally physically stimulates your appetite and creates this intense sense of urgency. Right next to it, yellow brings in warmth, happiness, and optimism. Then look across to the other side of the spectrum, blue. Blue symbolizes trust, logic, loyalty, and security. What we're looking at here isn't just graphic design theory. It is the modern psychological translation of millions of years of evolutionary survival tactics. Okay, Section 4, context changes everything. Now, obviously, we aren't just simple robots reacting to colors in exactly one way all the time. We're highly complex creatures, and our reactions depend entirely on our environment. There's this framework called the color and context theory.
It suggests that seeing a color like red in a specific social or physical setting can trigger deeply ingrained positive associations. For example, in sports, wearing red can signal a surge in testosterone, showing dominance and literally giving athletes a competitive edge. In a social setting, wearing red actually increases perceived attractiveness and signals a romance, which ties right back to those ancient primate mating instincts we just talked about. But if you shift the context just a tiny bit, that exact same evolutionary instinct screams at us to back away. Think about it. If you see a ton of red ink on a math exam, it immediately signals failure, danger, and ramps up your anxiety, which, by the way, has actually been shown to undermine intellectual performance. Or if you see a sudden flush of red in a friend's face, your brain instantly processes that as anger or a potential threat. It's the exact same color, the exact same wavelength of light hitting your eyeball. But the psychological context completely flips that biological switch from positive to negative.
Finally, Section 5, Designing the Consumer Journey. Knowing all this evolutionary history, it is wild to see how modern brands actively exploit our biological programming to drive their sales. Take those fast food brands again, McDonald's, KFC. They strategically use red and yellow. Why? Well, red stimulates the appetite and forces a sense of urgency, while yellow grabs your attention with this burst of welcoming warmth. It's a calculated 1-2 punch designed to make you hungry and make you act right now. Now contrast that with financial institutions like Chase or American Express. They use blue. Blue projects calm, security, trust. You definitely wouldn't want a bright red bank, right? Red signals danger and urgency, not exactly what you want for your life savings. And luxury brands like Chanel and Rolex, they use black and gold to signal exclusivity and sophistication. None of this is an accident, guys. It is highly targeted psychological engineering. The power of this visual branding is so immense that it can literally override your physical senses. Going back to that MRI hospital study for a second, the researchers also did a taste test with the kids. They handed them 2 hamburgers. One was in a totally plain, unlabeled box. The other was in a bright, familiar McDonald's box. Here's the crazy part. It was the exact same hamburger inside both boxes. Yet, the children overwhelmingly insisted that the burger in the branded box tasted better. Their visual recognition of the brand, rooted deep in those primal reward centers, straight up convinced their brains that the food was physically superior. Dr. Amanda Bruce, the lead on that MRI study, summed the whole thing up perfectly. She said, the brains of children are imprinted with food logos. Because kids don't yet have the inhibitory processes to make purely logical decisions, they are incredibly susceptible to these neuromarketing tactics. And let's be real, as adults, we aren't completely immune either, not by a long shot. Those biological triggers are still right there, humming away in the background every single time we walk down a grocery aisle or pass a billboard on the highway. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with something to chew on. The next time you feel a sudden, undeniable craving when you see a brightly colored fast food sign, or you feel this immediate sense of trust looking at a bank's blue logo, take a second to pause. Think about that ancient primate brain inside your head. Are your everyday purchasing decisions really your own logical choices? Or are you just hearing an evolutionary echo from millions of years ago, carefully amplified by modern marketers? Definitely something to keep in mind the next time you hit the drive-thru. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the biology of branding.